What happens when life doesn't just knock you off course, but completely rewrites the map? And how do you keep moving forward when you don't even know where you're going next? There comes a point in every person's life when you realize that what you're facing can't be fixed, optimized, or hustled your way out of. Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors is hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Leviton, and I help high achievers just like you who feel stuck bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. Traditional self-help doesn't work. It's either too rigid, too generic, or too overwhelming. My approach is different. I simplify change by making it so easy it can't not happen. Using my easier framework, I'll help you create habits, routines, and behaviors that stick for good, so you can stop struggling and start thriving. It's that easy. In today's episode, we're asking, what's the difference between happiness and joy? And why does confusing the two leave so many people stuck, reactive, and at the mercy of their circumstances? See, most people are chasing happiness without realizing it's the one thing they have the least control over. And that's why today I'm so excited to be joined by Matt Kutz. Matt is a PhD in global leadership, an award-winning author, a Fulbright scholar, a professor, a leadership researcher, and much more. In this conversation, Matt shares why joy isn't just something you feel, it's something you choose, even in the middle of intense hardship. And Matt should know, because as you'll hear in this episode, at the time of recording, Matt had recently been diagnosed with advanced metastatic prostate cancer, a challenge that he not only faces head-on, but uses as fuel to continue to grow and contribute more to the world and those he loves. You'll hear how Matt's cancer diagnosis forced him to put every mindset principle he'd ever had to the test. And listen close or you might miss the powerful concepts that Matt teaches around congruence and compassion. I've been doing this a long time, but his insights around those two words were game-changing for me. So with that, please enjoy this conversation with Matt Kutz. What is the difference between joy and happiness?
So joy is something that you experience regardless of the circumstances that you find yourself in. Joy can be there in the midst of pain and suffering and grief, whereas generally I describe happiness as a consequence of your surroundings. So when things are going well, things are going your way, you're getting what you think you want, then you're happy. But joy, I think, transcends that.
Okay, so joy transcends happiness. Happiness, then, if I'm understanding it, has a lot more to do with maybe your circumstances, your state of being, your environment, and different things like that. So which of these is, I don't want to say should, is more fruitful of a pursuit, right? We want to be happy. We want to live a good life. How do we start moving towards whatever that looks like?
Yeah. So I think, as I said, joy transcends happiness. So I think the goal, the pursuit should be joy. Now, does that mean that I shouldn't try to set up the circumstances around me to make me happy? Of course you can and should. But you've got to remember that life has a way of bringing things into your path that don't necessarily align with what you want to do, where you want to be, that kind of a thing. So when that happens, we can't let those circumstances dictate our emotions and dictate our happiness. And what happens is when we make happiness the goal, then we end up being consumer driven, and we actually forget about the people around us and only do things that make me happy, only put myself in situations where I'm getting what I want. Where joy, on the other hand, acknowledges the fact that, well, I do what I want. I mean, we do. It's not bad to have that, but it recognizes that when other people are around or when the circumstances aren't quite what I imagine them to be, that I can still operate in a sense of joy. So for me, joy is an intentional attitude, an intentional outlook that you create from the inside that manifests to the outside, if I could say it that way. Whereas happiness kind of comes to you externally from the outside, and you're essentially a victim of your circumstances if happiness is really the only thing you're ever after.
Yeah, I like at the end there, as you said, joy is more of an inside out thing, where happiness is maybe an outside in thing. And when it is something that's outside in, it's legitimately inherently outside of your control, which, to your point, makes you a victim of your circumstances. But you mentioned, that life has a way of lifing, so to speak, that life will do as it does. One of my favorite quotes is that famous Mike Tyson quote, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And what I like to add when I talk to clients is that life will punch you in the face pretty much daily.
Yes.
And we understand that no matter what, we don't have control over everything, but sometimes life will put small little stumbling stones, and sometimes life will put giant roadblocks. And I know that you went through cancer. You
Mhm.
went through a diagnosis, and came out the other side of that, which is one of probably the biggest
Yeah.
roadblocks that life can throw at you. So I'm curious, what was your mindset like at that time, like when you were first diagnosed? Like, with, as they say, hindsight is 2020, and
Right.
it's everyone can look back and say, okay, well, it's all about how you look at things. But when you were first finding out about this and realizing everything in your life was going to change, what did that do to you?
I was terrified. I mean, it absolutely terrified me. And it made me angry. I mean, the classic stuff. So yeah, when I first went through it, I mean, it was November. It was actually November of 23. So literally 2 years ago this month was when I found out I was diagnosed. And I had a couple stages in there, because the first conversation I had with my physicians, it was like, okay, well, don't worry about it. It's prostate cancer, and it's very treatable. You've got the easy kind of cancer. We're going to be fine. And then probably 4 or 5 weeks after that, after the autopsies and MRIs and the other PET scans and things, they found out, oh, yeah, that's all true, but it's not the easy kind. In fact, yours is very aggressive and advanced, and we actually found some in your lymph nodes and in your bones already. So it's metastasized, and it was at that point that I'm like, what the heck, what gives here? So yeah, I was terrified. I was angry, and that's really what it was. And then it took me a minute. I mean, you don't just get that news and be like, hey, just pick yourself by the bootstraps. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. And all those cliches. You actually have to deal with what Peter Drucker talked about in his 7 drivers of innovation in his book Innovation and Entrepreneurship. He actually talks about one of the drivers of innovation it being incongruity. And incongruity is when life happens to you in a way that you didn't expect it to happen to you. And all of a sudden, what you believe and what you hope is challenged by reality. And like, I'm a person of faith, and I have a strong conviction in that. So I'm like, all of a sudden this happens, and I'm like, God let me down, kind of a thing. And that's an incongruity. Now I've got to deal with that. I can either feel sorry for myself and fall into despair and be angry at God and blow everything off, or I can recognize that, okay, this is an incongruity and something needs to innovate or be innovated here. And for me, it was my mindset and my thinking.
I love that concept of incongruity. It's not one that I've heard before, but similar to past topics listeners know, I speak a lot about expectations and
Mhm.
what I call arguing with reality. I want things to be one way, they're a different way. And inherent in that is a discrepancy. I want things to be different than they are. And that is, as the Buddha said, the source of all suffering, the
Right.
source of all sadness, and the opposite of joy and happiness. And you can add layers onto that in terms of religion, in terms of
Mhm.
deserving, and what why do bad things happen to good people, and why do good things happen to bad people, and all of this context. But it really comes down to that one word, that incongruity, which is very similar to another word you use, which is uncertainty.
Yeah.
And it's just the unknown is one of the scariest places to be.
Yeah.
And when we're out of control in life, in business, anywhere, it is one of the worst feelings we have as humans. Somewhere deep down in us, we all want a sense of agency. We want to be the masters of our own life. And yet, when life happens, when these things happen, it's a picture perfect proof that that's not the case. It's like whenever I go to the ocean and go swimming in the beach, I'm always reminded how insignificant I am when I'm getting pummeled by waves. Doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how much money you have, the
Right.
ocean will humble you. So
That's right.
things,
It's like,
right,
you think you're a strong swimmer? Let me show you.
right.
Yeah.
So now, how do we start to grapple with those things, the incongruities of life and the uncertainty of what life brings, with the reality that our deepest desire is to have a roadmap to a destination that we can set out for?
I think you actually kind of answered the question, or at least that's how I would answer it when you talk about your ocean analogy. Because I think one of the ways that we have to deal with those incongruities is recognize our smallness. And not that we're insignificant. I don't believe that for a moment. But we do have to recognize that we are a small part in the big picture. And for me, that's exactly what happened. Is you begin to get introspective, of course, during moments like that. So you consider things you haven't considered before. You think things you haven't really thought or were possible. And you talked about that incongruity. I think it's more than just I want life to go a certain way. It's actually I believe in the core of my being. That's where the religion aspect comes in. I believe in the core of my being that life is this, that it is this way, not that I want it to be this way. And then when you're challenged with that, you're like, okay, wait a second, I must have been wrong this whole time. And so that is also the beginning of beginning to feel like, okay, there's a bigger picture at play than just what I want, what I think I need, or even what I believe to be true. And so that starts you on a process of, as you mentioned, realizing you're just a little fish in a big ocean, so to speak. But then that also frees you up to a certain extent to be able to recognize that the part that I have to play needs to be shifted. And that's what happened for me. I began to realize that, okay, so this is what I believed was to be true. How is this obstacle, if we call it an obstacle, meant to make me better? I'm a big fan of Nassim Nicholas Taleb's concept of anti-fragility. And so I believe in processes like this. That's what happens. I wrote in one of my books. Chaos is the package that your potential arrives in, and that got a little traction a few years back. But one of the things that's interesting about that is now you say it and you're like, yeah, I believe it's true. But then when something like that happens to you, I've got to put my money where my mouth is. And so that's what happened. I went through the anger and all those things like everybody does. But I came out the other side of that realizing, okay, whatever the plan is, obviously I don't know it. I thought I knew it, but whatever the plan is, again, whether you're a person of faith or not, I don't think it matters. Whatever that plan is, you begin to realize that this thing is here to make me stronger. And I think that's what you have to do. I think that's where the joy comes in is I have to realize that this is supposed to make me better, not destroy me. And I think some people fall into the self-pity, and that's where the work is at. That's where the real work comes in. And I do a little bit of leadership development and coaching as well. And we have to encourage people to believe that, okay, this thing you're facing is not meant for your destruction. It's meant to make you better. And we have to wrestle with the reality that time and chance happens to everybody. Like you said, life will life you. And that's perfect. And because we have to but some people actually don't believe that. And that's why they can't experience happiness. And it's why I also believe joy transcends happiness, is because you realize that this is a choice that I make, not a condition of my environment.
Yeah, That last bit there, that this is a choice that I make, not a condition of my environment, I think is extremely important for anyone listening. And it's a choice that, at least in my experience, you have to make every day. And I think that's a
Mhm.
big part of this, is that when we talk about mindset and all of these things, it can be so like airy fairy of like, what is it, what even is that? Have a positive mindset. It's like, okay, like I believe that what's happens to me is for my own best interest, and I have to grow through what I go through, and whatever other dumb cliches and platitudes there are out there. And yet you tell yourself that on Monday, and then Tuesday you still have cancer, and
Right,
nothing will take that away, at least in the short term.
right.
So how did you, you could use your own personal experience or in your experience as a coach, as an entrepreneur, start to reconcile those two things, where the stuff that you're working on, the mindset things, they're all theoretically impactful on a broad, zoomed out 1,000-foot view, but each day when I wake up, it doesn't actually do anything to help me, or does it?
Right. No, I think that's a great question. And my answer to that would be you have to keep producing, and that's how I coped with it. I mean, so that's my experience was like, you know, because I think again, you made a great point. Is so many people enter into a denial phase. Listen, I'm not in denial that I have cancer. I just told somebody yesterday I was having lunch with them. It's like I have to wake up every morning and realize that I still have cancer, and I'm still. As a matter of fact, I've got 8 more months of treatment and those kinds of things. But I'm doing great. I'm doing fantastic. I feel good. And so what I have to do is tell myself every day, like you said, that okay, listen, this is a conscious choice I'm putting on. Listen, there are days that I don't. There are days when I've got a nice little leather back wing chair behind me, and I just sit in that chair, pull the blanket up over my head, that blanket right there, pull up over my head, and just be like, why is this happening? But that's very, very rare, very rare. But most of the days I'm like, okay, Matt, we have to do this here. And I'm really, really careful and mindful about the reality of the situation, because the last thing I want people to think is that, well, I'm in denial and therefore you should just pretend like it doesn't exist. I don't pretend like it doesn't exist. I still have to do my treatments, take my medications, take breaks. One of the consequences of the medications I'm on really drains me energy wise and fatigue. I'm normally not a nap guy, but I've got to do that. So you acknowledge the reality of your situation, but then keep delivering what you can deliver. And for me, that was my savior and really helped me. But you're absolutely right. You have to tell yourself every day. You've got to encourage yourself every day.
Yeah, I so appreciate you sharing that and sharing your story, and literally as you're going through it, because again, listeners know I say all the time, everything is the same. Everything is
Mhm.
an analogy for everything. Just like you used business books, you've referenced two business books already as
Right.
analogies for how you've gone through this in your life. And we can use the analogy of you, what you're going through, cancer diagnosis, and this battle that you're going through, as an analogy for someone trying to lose weight, someone trying to build a business. It's all the same thing. I think that it's great the way you're sharing this, because what you're doing is at the highest level of the highest possible stakes.
Sure.
The lessons that you're giving out are the same lessons that you would give to an entrepreneur or a parent or anything else, because the rules are the same. It's just that the situation that you're dealing with is literally the most intense possible way that it could be dealt to you.
Yeah.
So yeah,
This disease is
kudos.
trying to kill me.
Right, right, right,
So right.
right.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
might feel like your business is trying to kill you, but it probably isn't. You can
Right.
you can
Right.
cut and
Right.
run at
But you're
any bit of.
absolutely right. The principles apply across the board. I mean, and I have a new book coming out in December called Becoming Epic, where I chronicle some of this, and that's exactly what I tell the readers. This isn't just about battling cancer; it's about battling adversity of any kind. And the principles do work, the mindsets do work, and the belief systems do work, and the biggest challenges I think we have, and we've already, maybe I'm beating a dead horse now, and kind of being circular in this, but we believe that these things come against us to destroy us. We can't allow that to happen. We have to acknowledge the reality of it, but then also continue to battle on, and it really is. It's a battle. It can be cliche. I hate to say it. And I've learned so much about the cliches that people, because there's a lot of people who are very sympathetic and they want to encourage me, and the platitudes and the cliches are, just coming at me. And you be gracious. I know they're trying to help. I know they have my best interest in mind, but you have to do it.
Yeah.
You have to think the right thoughts and do the hard work.
Yeah. I mean, listen, again, as a coach for the last 15 years and doing this podcast for nearly 400 episodes now, I joke sometimes that like half of what I say are just cliches and platitudes. But the reality is that cliches exist for a reason. And all of these silly cliches are the literal truth. There's a reason that they keep popping up over and over and over. The one that comes to mind right now is like, I don't have to, I get to, right? Something that comes up in the fitness world and all these things that it's like, but that simple mind shift from like, oh my gosh, I have to wake up and go to chemo and battle this thing and be sick again. But it's like versus like I get to, how many people with a diagnosis like yours don't get that opportunity or
Right.
don't get that chance or a million other things. So it's yes, cliche, but also true. And yes, to your point, takes being beaten into your head. That's why I don't mind these circular conversations or us saying the same thing over and over for the last 20 minutes. I've said the same things over and over for the last 400 episodes, and I'll
Right.
say it for 1,000 more because this is the stuff that people need to hear. So I do appreciate you saying that. And I want to switch gears a little bit though and talk about your book. You brought up your new book, Epic, and I know that Epic is an acronym, and listeners know that I'm big on acronyms. I think that they're very useful for helping people remember and crystallize knowledge. So could you explain what that
Yeah,
acronym is and why you
absolutely.
chose it?
Yeah, so Becoming Epic is the title of the book. Epic is an acronym for becoming excellent, becoming perceptive, becoming inspired, and becoming compassionate. And a neat story just about that book. I actually wrote it um, during my radiation. And I had to, radiation, for listeners who are familiar with how cancer works, it's every day for a preset number of days at the exact same time. They have to be 24 hours apart. So you set your time at the beginning, and every day for 40 days you show up at. My time was 8:15 a.m. Every day. So that means you can't do anything for 40 days. You have to stay home, be at the. So I had to cancel three um, conferences that I was speaking at. And so that really bummed me out. I mean, because it's not just the cancer that bums you out; it's the all the peripheral collateral damage as well that really bums you out. I mean, it's like this is a major disruption to my life. And so, but I didn't want to sit and feel sorry for myself for 40 days. So I made a vow to myself that, all right, I've got to still produce. I've got to still be productive. I've got to still be creative. So I'm going to write 1,000 words every day for the 40 days of my radiation. And those 1,000 words every day for those 40 days is what ended up becoming this book, Becoming Epic. And it was more of a message to me, really. Yeah, okay, listen, you have to continue to be excellent in everything that you do. Here's what excellence is. Here are the obstacles to excellence. Here's what happens when you are. Here's what happens when you're not. And then I repeated that pattern for perception. I have to continue to develop my perception. I can't just have my head in the clouds and be sorry for myself and not pay attention to my fellow man. I have to still develop this sense of perceiving reality as it is, not as I want it to be. So we talk about that is the perception part. Then we talk about the inspiration part. And for me, this was perhaps the most life giving for me, in that I began to realize that, again, going back to our very first question you had, inspiration comes from within, not from external factors. And so I talked through that process of how can we cultivate inspiration when the world around us seems to be wanting to kill us, and the situation I'm in, whether it's a horrible relationship, whether it's my kids just hate me, or my boss hates me, or financial ruin, or divorce, or cancer, or whatever it might be, my business is failing. How do I be inspired despite those contacts? And so that's what I talk about there. And I came to the conclusion and began to realize, of course, there's a lot of research involved in it as well, but this idea is we've got to learn to curate and cultivate our own inspiration, and how we do that and not let our inspiration be purely external inputs. And then finally, compassion. And for me, that was also pretty insightful. I learned in that process, the what passion is. We always had this idea um, about passion. And I've never been a fan of it. I know a lot of coaches, a lot of people talk about, well, follow and pursue your passions. You can ask my kids, you can ask some of my clients. I would never give that advice. I always say pursue and follow the things that make you curious. You should pursue the things that you have questions about. So you do that. But passion, when you think about it, is actually not a good thing, because when you think about the original Latin and passion, or passio, it's this idea of pain and suffering. We use it around Easter time when we talk about the Passion of the Christ, for example. That wasn't a pleasurable experience. According to Roman torture techniques, and they were pretty good at sucking the life out of you slowly. And that's what passion was. That's what it meant, and that's the connotation it carried. And then you add the prefix "com," which is also a Latin word that means to be alongside of or come with. So compassion simply means to walk in sorrow and to stand in the presence of grief and suffering. And so you take that, well, what does it have to do with leadership? What it has to do with being epic is a person who is epic understands that the suffering and the sorrow and the pain and the grief is there to shape you, is there to make you better. And it's also choices we make. And I make the analogy that it's like being intentional about choosing to do the hard thing. And somebody who truly experiences compassion is willing to do the hard thing for themselves, but also for the people around them, which is how we generally use it today. So so be excellent, be perceptive, be inspired, and be compassionate. And when you do those four, I call them the four leadership maxims, or epic maxims. And those four things, I think, really help us become epic in our life, in our leadership, in our relationships, or wherever you are.
Yeah, wow. I'm so thankful for you sharing that and doing that, writing that. It's such a good example, lesson, so many different aspects of that there. One, as you said, you had 40 days. You wrote this whole book in 40 days. Easily could have gone into a woe is me, or just sat and watched TV or scrolled on your phone or do, a million other things in that time that you had to sit there. But you chose to create something to bring not just yourself, but bring others forward. And again, that's a book on leadership for maybe CEOs or business owners, but everything that you just stated is a life lesson. And what's really interesting to me is the compassion bit, because it's not what I would have thought about using that word. It's a different direction that you took it, but so impactful because it goes back to learning to reframe the negatives as positives, which is, in my eyes, having compassion for yourself,
Right.
and learning to see that, again, you don't have to, you get to, you go through what you grow through, what you go through, or whatever other thing. And something I say to my clients all the time, they're like, this is so hard, this is so challenging, this, whatever they're talking about. It's like, yeah, exactly. That's a part of it. It's not a flaw in the system. It
Right.
is a part of the system.
Right.
People think that like the negative parts are like a bug, and like it's like it means something is off or something is wrong. But you start to see that, or as I'm hearing it from you, it's like, no, you have to learn to not only accept that part, but almost embrace it and lean into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's another axiom, but it's actually what makes you strong. Without the pain and the suffering, we wouldn't know what joy is, and those are the kind, or happiness, or contentment. All those things, and it's a very natural phenomenon. I have a master's degree in exercise physiology, and one of the things that we learned is the physiology behind exercise. It's a great analogy because exercise is stress. I mean, you're actually damaging your body. Everybody knows exercise is good for them. They don't think about the fact that when you exercise, you are actually damaging and putting stress on your muscles, your joints, your bones, your heart, all of your lungs, all of those things. But we all know, well, I'm going to recover. I'm going to get stronger from it. And it's very simple, but we need to understand that also the things that come to us in life, in our businesses, and the employee stresses that we have, and the hiring stress, and all the different things of scaling our businesses, those are all exercise for our business, exercise for our mindsets. That if we continue to go through it, and here's the scary part: in the human body, you have this thing called the plateau. In business and life, we call it status quo. And so what happens is when you reach a plateau in your human strength development or power development, what do you have to do? You have to apply more stress, higher stress, greater stress, longer stress, and then your body will get over the plateau and continue to grow again. Same thing in businesses when they're coming up against a status quo or refusal to change, obstacles to innovation. What do you need to do? You need to curate more resistance so that your business, your mindset, whatever it might be, your relationship gets stronger. Do the hard thing.
Yeah, such a good point. So, I love that juxtaposition of the plateau in your fitness and the added needing to add stress, not shy away from it. The last two questions I have for you, the same two questions I ask all my guests. And the first is, what is the change that you want to see in the world?
The change that I want to see in the world is compassion. I mean, you look at I don't want to make this political or religious or anything like that, but if we would just learn to really be compassionate for each other, and really do unto others as we would have done unto us, kind of thing, then I think that would be, the best. I mean, it would change a lot of things for the good.
Yeah, I can't agree more. And lastly, if you had one action step that listeners could take right now today, as soon as they stop listening, as soon as they take their headphones out, to start making whatever change they're trying to make in their life, whether it's around their business, their personal development, whatever change they're trying to make just a little bit easier, what action could they take?
So, well, one thing is a mindset. I'm going to actually answer with two things: is begin to change the way you think, and then leads to the second thing is to begin to understand and explore the biases and the presuppositions that you carry. And I can tell you firsthand experience some of the greatest successes I've had with my students, my clients, different things is just let's just sit down and let's just use Daniel Kahneman's list, from Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, and go through. It's like, here's a list of cognitive biases, logical fallacies. Which one of these are you most likely to be a victim of? And recognize that. And by recognizing that and then working it in, it takes time, but it can really begin to change how you approach the world in a day.
Yeah, I totally agree. I've done entire episodes on a lot of these cognitive biases. Thinking Fast and Slow is one of my favorite books. So I'll link to those in the show notes for anyone listening who want to check some of that out and dig deeper into what Matt's talking about. Matt, I'm going to have links for your book, for anything else that you have to do. Where is the best place for people to find your work and learn more about what you do?
Yeah, thank you. The best place is my website, which is MatthewKutz.com. Kutz is spelled Kutz, and Matthew with two T's. So MatthewKutz.com, and you can, all my books there, some of my research is there, blogs, videos, emails, all the stuff is there.
Amazing. Thank you, Matt. I really enjoyed this conversation.